my channel. Welcome back to another video. I'm Jessie and you're watching. Welcome to another installment of my Books That Wasted My Time series, where I talk about all of the books that wasted my time. I will leave the other videos in this series linked down below if you want to check those out. The book that I am going to be featuring in this video is one of my most highly anticipated releases. I definitely am not the only one. I think the booktube community was collectively holding a breath that they knew damn well that they were holding in anticipation of The Maidens, the sophomore novel of Alex Michaelides. But before we get into the nitty and the gritty, all of the details of The Maidens and exactly why it wasted so much of my time, I want to give a big shout out to the sponsor of today's video, none other than dark academia. Dark academia is a genre that was popular in the past and has recently experienced a resurgence. Dark academia books are characterized by their aesthetic and the imagery that they evoke when you're holding one of those books in your hands. These are dark, expansive hallways, dusty pages, pleated skirts, and neutral trousers. We have neutral blazers, bow ties, dapper dandy dress, as well as traditional librarian aesthetics. Dark academia is absolutely all of the rage right now. So what exactly is dark academia? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Because the damn sure ain't this book. According to the Bookdernets, dark academia is literally any book that is simply set at an old white institution. Old white institution, dark academia. Extra points if the entire cast of the book is whiter than the teeth of a Kardashian. Extra points if we throw in literature exclusively written by old dead white men. Bonus points if there are statues represented at any point in the novel.
And the final hallmark.
The thing that really takes the cake in this genre is rich white people problems. Thank you again to Dark Academia for sponsoring this video. I really appreciate everything that you are doing for the book community. All right, y'all, let us get into the video. In The Maidens, we are following a grieving counselor therapist named Mariana, who is reeling after the loss of her beloved husband, whom she met at college when he was a professor. Mariana is described as a brilliant group therapist who is somewhat troubled and struggling to parent her niece, whose name is Zoe. And when a student at Zoe's institution, Cambridge, gets murdered, she becomes absolutely fixated on a professor, a dazzling, charming professor named Edward Fosca, as the killer. Edward Fosca also has this group of elite, very privileged female students, the chosen ones, the ones that are allowed into his inner circle, the ones that are allowed to hold private meetings and counsel with him. They are the it girls of the school. Everybody wants to be them. Everybody wants to date them. Everybody wants to be able to be close to Edward Fosca in the same way that they are. And these girls are called the Maidens, after which the book gets its namesake. It is supposed to be a dark academia thriller. The second book, following just the absolute grandiose, larger than life title known as The Silent Patient, that is currently being adapted for into a movie, I believe. I'm pretty sure it's a movie, not a television.
Yeah, it's totally a movie.
The Silent Patient was a book following a therapist named Theo, who was also brilliant, also troubled, as he tried to heal this patient named Alicia, who murdered her husband
very violently.
She said, "You gonna die." Murdered her husband and then stopped speaking, and she has been silent for 7 years at this point.
She said, "I said what I had to say."
That book was brilliant, and because The Silent Patient was amazing, very close to my heart, I loved the fear factor of the book. I loved the atmosphere, the pacing, the setting. I loved every single thing about The Silent Patient. Because of that, I was mad hype for The Maidens, especially because I have not had luck with the dark academia genre. I just have not had luck, and it is especially these dark academia books written by white folks who follow its center privileged white people. But I trust this author. After The Silent Patient, he was an automatic auto-buy author. Click, add to cart, point. You know, okay. All right. Well, this was hurting my ear anyway. I just want to stress, I cannot stress enough how deeply excited we were about this book. My whole body was vibrating with anticipation in regards to this title. Also, the cover is brilliant, stunning, got me even more hyped, even more hooked. Now, before I get into why
am I still holding this book up?
Before I get into all of the things that the Maidens did poorly, and there are a lot of them, I want to highlight some of the positives of this book because I don't believe that books are one thing. You know, they're not either good or bad. We all have subjective reading experiences with books, and I always try to say something positive about the books that wasted my time before getting into my rant reviews. So some of the positives of this book, I thought it was really, really fantastic the way that Alex writes of complex grief. Our protagonist is grieving the loss of her husband and also has a really complex relationship with her parents, and parental grief and abandonment was handled, I think, very powerfully in this book. I personally very much related to the explanations of grief and how it can permanently damage a person, how it dissolves the self you were before it and leaves you to become something new. I know exactly what that feels like, and I thought that that was handled so well. I also really loved the Greek tragedy vibes. I loved also the dark fairy tale vibe. Both of those themes I think were handled pretty well. It was pretty dope that the chapters were short, that the writing was very hands-off, it was fast-paced, it was a quick read. And just like in The Silent Patient, Alex shows that he has a really creative way of illustrating emotions and communicating a character's emotional states. I just really enjoyed those things. But my absolute favorite thing about this book was the period on the final page signaling that my torment had ended. We're gonna ease in slow. First of all, before we get into how problematic this book is, before we get into all of the things that are deeply wrong with the Maidens, and there are things. There are so many things crawling in the dark of regarding this book. Before we get into that, I want to talk about some of the criticisms that I had while reading the book, the things that I just noticed and wasn't a fan of, but weren't necessarily like books that wasted my time worthy. We're gonna ease in softly. I am literally lubricating this book review. I am also dreading getting into the things that just ground my gears regarding this book because I still am in I'm in a fugue state about the fact that I hated this book so much.
This is what you get for trusting white men, Jesse.
I do not dig books that are dialogue heavy. This book is incredibly dialogue heavy. It has minimal descriptions. It doesn't have any of that memorable, poetic, striking language and sentence structure that The Silent Patient did. And it damn sure wasn't gripping. It did not grip me in any of the same ways that the only thing this book gripped was my patience. It was so boring. It was ridiculously boring. It was so boring, it was almost entertaining. This is how thick the characters were.
They
were so flat. Okay, these were the most one-dimensional characters I have read in a very, very long time. Bosco is supposed to be this very intelligent, very handsome, very charming and charismatic professor who, with every step that he places upon the earth, rainbows and kittens are born underneath his feet. I did not get that at all. He is far too in love with himself and quite open about his own self-worship in order to be any of those things, in order to be charming and charismatic. He is so clearly, comically enamored with his own self. How did we get here? Why? Why did we get here? Why we get here? There was a scene where we finally get to hear this amazing man lecture. And that lecture scene was so completely boring. It was boring. I was actually really excited for that whole scene to take place. The way that it was built up and how even every student in the room was described as being ramrod straight backed, bodies zinging in anticipation of hearing this man lecture and speak. And the lecture itself was lackluster. He's so cheesy. He is a slice of cheddar and it's moldy. On this particular barley, there was a black fungus called ergot, which had hallucinogenic properties. I wish I was hallucinating. Thousands of years later, LSD would be made from it. Whether the Greeks knew it or not, they were all tripping slightly, which might account for some of the visions. Fosca said this with a wink, and it got a laugh. It's just so cringy. He ends his amazing lecture with, if you're not aware of the transcendent, if you're not awake to the glorious mystery of life and death, I wish I was dead, that you're lucky enough to be a part of it, if it doesn't fill you with joy and strike you with awe, you might as well not be alive. That's the message of the tragedies. Participate in the wonder. For your sake, for Tara's sake, live it. You could have heard a pin drop, and then sudden, loud, emotional, spontaneous applause. The applause went on for some time. They were probably applauding because the lecture was over. I absolutely loved the references to the silent patient because that almost made the book worth it. Those two references to the silent patient almost justified the amount of years that this book took off of my life. I just have to get this off of my chest, so let's just kick it off with this point right here. The Maidens, which are marketed as a huge part of this book, get like 2 scenes.
They get 2 scenes.
And not only that, the Maidens have no characters. They get names, they get descriptions, and that's pretty much it. That's it. They have few speaking lines in the book. They have a very little role to play in the story, and they are some of the flattest characters in the book. They are the characters who get, actually, ironically, the least amount of characterization. I guarantee y'all, those of you who read and loved this book, that you could name all of the Maidens. I bet you that y'all couldn't have named 3 of the Maidens. That is how forgettable they were. They were literally as forgettable as my experiences with cishet men. I'll tell you what this book should have been called. The book shouldn't have been called The Maidens. It should have been called The Working Professionals Who Should Be Fired from Their Jobs. This is a 300 and something page. It is, oh thank God it's not. Yep, it is a 330.
How long is this book?
This is a 333 page treatise regarding all of the people who should be fired from their jobs. First of all, Edward Fosca is just creepy. He's creepy. We need to strap him right into the electric chair. He is so obviously preying on his students. He, at one point, I think, kisses the protagonist without her consent and then smirks at her. He would have been smirking from the back of a police car, okay? I mean, no, because...
You know, obviously he wouldn't get arrested. He's a white man, so I don't even know why I said that.
No, nowhere near as great of a lecturer as people seem to think. Nobody raised any alarms about the fact that every single year forms an elite group of only young, attractive women and then holds secret audiences with them and boasts about it all over campus. There were no red flags. There were no bells. I want the power of a white man. Not because I would want to do that, but because what I want is to be given the benefit of the doubt to that degree. I want to be able to walk through a world doing things that are
incredibly sketchy
and not have people go, hey, wait a minute. This shit don't look right. This shit don't look right. This is not adding up. Okay, you're trying to fit a circle into a square and everybody's chill with it. It doesn't make any sense. Then we have the police inspector. He need to get fired. You need to firing squad. Okay, Edward Fosca is getting the electric chair and the chief inspector is getting the firing squad because this man lets this woman, okay, Mariana is allowed to just trample the investigation. She is allowed to just show up. She is allowed to interrogate people. She is conducting her whole own investigation of Edward Fosca, and the police inspector tells her multiple times, he's like, I'm gonna arrest you. Like, you can't be doing this. You are infringing upon my investigation. You are overstepping boundaries. This is not okay. This is not professional. What are you doing? But of course, you know, she's an attractive white woman, so she's allowed to do whatever the fuck she wants. Look, I am willing to suspend a lot of disbelief when I read books, especially thrillers. Look, I'm willing to suspend my disbelief, especially when it comes to white privilege, because
whiteness is a hell of a drug.
So I do understand logically that I should not have been surprised by the reign that Queen Cersei is allowed to have in this book. She be doing whatever she wants. I could not believe it. She at one point is like yelling at this chief. and lives and survives. I could never. I could literally never. I could never. He need to be fired too. And then let's talk about Mariana herself. I don't even know what to give her because the electric chair is too good for her and the firing squad is also too good for her. All I want for Mariana is for her to get that license stripped away. This is the worst group therapist I have ever heard of in my entire life, facilitating group therapy in the most irresponsible way and forming zero boundaries with her patients. Can we please talk about the relationship between Henry and Mariana? So Henry is one of her clients. And he is a very troubled young man. He's obviously really struggling.
Actually, I don't know if he's young or not. It doesn't matter.
He's a struggling, mentally ill man and desperately is in need of help and has become very latched to his therapist, which is something that is very common in therapy, especially with people who are struggling with certain types of illnesses. Emotional transference can easily happen. But because of that, it is the job of a therapist to recognize that when it is happening and to set up boundaries as these issues arise. I think that she missed the class on boundaries. That's what I think. When she was going through her education, I think that she just skipped that whole chapter. You know what? Because let me just give you an example. Don't even take my word for it. Don't listen to me. There is no need to take my word for it, because I'm Black and y'all not gonna believe me anyway. Henry is very obviously obsessed with her. He is calling her at all hours of the night, saying real creepy things. And also he is just showing up at her home. He's just showing up at her home. Oh, and this isn't super alarming because she hosts therapy at her home. But he's showing up when it's not time for group. He has no responsibility or reason to be there. And there's a scene in the book where after he shows up unannounced, being creepy as shit, Mariana is like describing herself as being really creeped out by the darkness around her. And she says, I can imagine Henry is waiting in the dark for me. How about you imagine 911? How about you imagine the police? Hello, I am a white woman and I feel threatened. They will be there like that. They will arrive and they probably won't arrest Henry. They would probably just find like a random Black man to arrest instead. But the point is that somebody would get arrested for you, sweetie. Call the police. I physically cannot. And then on top of that, she's just not very bright. She's just not the sharpest cookie. I'm screaming. She hears footsteps behind her.
In the dark.
She knows that she's being followed. The same urgent footsteps, the same man, and he was getting closer. Mariana looked around but couldn't see anything, just clouds of mist disappearing into the dark shadows. But she could hear him approaching. Who is it? She called into the darkness. Who's there? Hi, my name's Killy McKilly and I'm here to stabby. What are you expecting? I cannot. This review is not going to be coherent. I'm just going to be jumping from point to point to point because he didn't bother to write a coherent book. So why my review got to be coherent? Why my review is expected to be more coherent than this book? It's just not fair. Unattainable expectations. Okay, we're not doing that. I just didn't buy Mariana's deep obsession with Edward Fosca. I didn't buy it. Like, she latched onto him like a leech, was just so hell-bent on getting him arrested that she just didn't care about absolutely anything else. And I didn't buy that. And maybe I would have bought it if she had been given literally any character at all. Her entire characterization starts and ends with the men in her life. Grief is a monster and it can devour you. But though that is all we got to learn about her. We didn't learn anything else about her. I don't know anything about her as a character. And so maybe that's the reason why it just wasn't believable that she was so latched on to this investigation, because we didn't even know who she was. We didn't know who any of these characters were. And as a result, I didn't care about any of them. I genuinely did not give one funk. Looking at the backs of my eyelids would have been more entertaining than reading this book. I have experienced more thrill from sugar packets. Pixie sticks would have been more thrilling than the Maidens. I genuinely do not see how this is dark academia. Yes, it takes place at Cambridge. She's not even a student there. She's not a student there. The Maidens are not explored at all. We get one lecture from Edward Fosca. school is a setting. Like, okay, is dark academia a school setting now? Is that the standard that we're establishing? It's just not. It's not dark academia, and it damn sure ain't a thriller. Y'all will be out here taking books written by Black people that are outright thriller and horror books, like documenting the thrills and the horror of being Black. And y'all will be out here, white people will be out here confidently calling those books not thrillers. I don't see how this is a thriller. And this is the point that I'm at. And I did a video talking about how problematic it is that so many people are denouncing the Black contributions to the thriller and horror genres, saying that they don't count for the genre. So I will leave that video linked down below, and it will make more sense than what I just said. But I'm at the point where if I read a thriller by a white person and it don't scare me, I'm at the point where I'm gonna start saying it's not a thriller. How do you like it? How do y'all like it?
We're about to find out.
This is not a thriller. There was nothing scary about this book. Nothing. There was not a damn thing. Like, at no point did I care about the danger or even feel that there was danger. And I wouldn't have cared either way because we didn't get characters to care about. It doesn't, like, there's a reason why character starts with the word care, okay? I physically cannot with this book. The other thing about Fosca that just really annoys me is he was so clearly a ripoff of Hannibal Lecter. So clearly. And I was thinking this as I was reading the book. I was like, man, I'm getting dollar store Hannibal the Cannibal vibes from this man. And then we get to page 262 and I'm freaking done. Fosca says, "Oh, she hasn't told you. How very interesting." I want to slap this man's face. Fosca kept smiling. He looked amused. "Perhaps you should point that powerful analytical lens back at yourself, Mariana. What kind of mother are you?" That is almost a direct quote from The Silence of the Lambs. The quote's in the movie. It's just, make it make sense. Make it make sense. He's not even trying anymore. I'm tired of discussing this book. I really am. I am extremely over it. So let's just talk about the plot twist. I will say, I didn't see it coming because I rarely see ableism coming. At this point, I should just expect it because of the world that we live in. This book definitely uses mental health as a plot twist, and I did not appreciate it. So in addition to the fact that the plot twist itself was very problematic, the whole way that it was executed, it's giving me train wreck. Honestly, we got to the plot twist and the book, that was the final straw because I realized that the book really was not going to get any better. It was in fact worse, and I should have DNF'd it because I would have had a more positive experience with the book had I DNF'd it. The book let me down the way that my father did when he walked out. It was that upsetting to me. I can't go into details because I want this to be spoiler free. Those of you who know the plot twist, and if you know you're not going to read this book, I would just look it up. In addition to the plot twist just being very disturbing, the issue that I had with it wasn't just the mental health used as a shocking twist to the story. It was the fact that the person who was revealed to be mentally ill was blamed for their own illness, was seen as having deserved the ending that they got, was seen as a villain instead of a victim. And it was really interesting that our protagonist, who is a therapist, villainized this mentally ill person. Make it make sense. I thought it was really lazy writing. I thought that it was ham-handed. I thought that it was sexist. And so many people said that The Silent Patient were sexist. And I still need to look up why, because when I read that book, I did not get sexist vibes. I did not get sexism at all, but that doesn't mean it wasn't there. I easily just could have missed it. Where I'm going with this is it makes sense that people would call A Silent Patient sexist, because even though I didn't see it, The Maidens definitely is. The darkest thing about this book is the reading slump it put me in. I'm glad that it's over. I'm glad that I got to the plot twist because I knew that that signaled the end of my torment. That's it for The Maidens. That's it. I am going to be making a reading 1-star reviews of The Maidens, which will hopefully be more eloquent than this video was. So definitely stay tuned for that video. I don't know what y'all want from me. This book wasn't it. And if you want to check out the other videos in the Books That Wasted My Time series, I will leave that series linked down below. If you made it this far in the video, why don't you comment down below with, is there a statue emoji? I don't think there is.
Is there a Statue of Liberty emoji?
Look, if there's a statue emoji, leave it in the comment section down below. I don't know anything. I'll also leave the video where I talk about my issues with the way that white reviewers review horror and thriller literature by BIPOC authors. That will be linked down below as well. Until next time, stay safe, wear a mask, and I hope to see you in my next video. This book sucked.